God is good?
All the time.
It seems like the rapture came out a little early today. They're like, enough of the Holy Spirit this week. Oh, what a great time this has been to be together and to learn to be family, learn to be with one another. I'm grateful. Just looking at the kids makes me really hopeful for the church. You know, there are many churches that I visit where there are no children and there are no youth, and so that's a good sign. I see so many signs of growth, and I just want to commend you to continue and to do the things that you are doing. Not only are you engaging our folks, our elders, you're engaging families, you're engaging children and youth, and that's wonderful. I want you to continue thinking that way. It is our final session. Please hold your tears. Not in your comments. But we will, before I continue, before I forget, I offered a free, not a free, but I offered a gift to the person that would ask the best question during the week. And by far, we had someone that I couldn't really answer her question because she answered something so theological deep that I go talk to Pastor Mike. Why? And so I wanted to say congratulations. This is a CD that I released many years ago called Pastor Danny and Friends. What I've done for many years is I've gathered my friends. As an ex-musician, because I don't really practice music so much anymore. That's one of the regrets in my position, not having the time to be able to do that. Is I don't do as much music, but I gather my friends. I have a lot of professional musician friends that I gather, so I call on this drummer and this guitar player and stuff. And that's why the concerts that I've done throughout the years, they're being called Pastor Danny and Friends. And I recorded this CD that kind of helped me process pain. So it's a little dark in the beginning because it talks about pain, and nobody wants to talk about pain and sorrow and depression. You know, we're supposed to be in victory in Jesus Christ all the time. But the fact is, that's not the way that life is. We have times of sorrow, we have times of pain, we have times of joy, and we need to be balanced like that. But I just want to give this gift to my sister here. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. Would you please put your hands together for her? She gave the best question. And she goes, Pastor David, what does Paul mean when he talks about men being the head of the wife? And I go, I ain't touching that. I'm not talking about that. And of course, we had 10 minutes, so, how can we answer that in 10 minutes? So, Pastor Nate, God bless you. So, we've been talking about, I hope you're tired of hearing of Acts 1:8. Now, can we say that by memory now? And you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes. And you will be my witness. Where? Jerusalem. Then? Judea. Then? Samaria. And then? This should be something that we live by. And I'm hoping that you've been challenged this week. Have you felt uncomfortable this week and kind of like, why are you going there? Why are you don't talk about that, If you've done that, that's good. The Holy Spirit usually stretches us, right? And I want to tell the band that I want to hire the band to come with me. I'm going on tour. I actually am. I'm going on tour next week. San Francisco, San Rafael, and Sacramento. So, hey, you guys got a gig if you want to, okay? And then I'm going to be going in September. I'm having a 10-city tour in Europe for the first time. And I'm going to be going to Barcelona. You got to say it like that. Otherwise, you know why I'm doing that? So you're like, why are you spitting? Spaniards speak with a lisp. So they don't say casa, they say caja. So it's Barcelona. Never mind, I just wasted a joke. Okay. So you're saying, move on with the preaching, please. All right. Well, Samaria is this beautiful place in Jerusalem, near Jerusalem. And it's a place, what have we heard about Samaria so far? The Samaritan woman, right? John chapter 4. Jesus has this encounter with this woman. She goes to a well, and that well, what time does she go to the well? Does anybody remember? Do you go to the well at noon? I wonder. Why do you go there? It's hot, right? It's in the middle of the desert. Why do you go there at noon? Because nobody else is there, right? You don't want to talk to anyone. I know people like that. They want to go to the supermarket at 3 in the morning because they don't want to run into people. And the thing is, we understand later on why, but Jesus came to the well at that time and started talking to her. Now, a good rabbi would not spend their time talking to a woman. That was part of the first century. You would not talk to a woman. A rabbi was quoted as saying, if you want to go insane, talk to a woman. But Jesus kind of broke that mold. And he started talking to her and asking her questions. And she's like, why are you talking to me? I'm not Jewish. You're Jewish. You should not be talking to me. And Jesus says, well, I want some water. Give me some water. He's actually asking her to serve him something. And it's a wonderful interaction. It's the first evangelist, the first female evangelist in the New Testament, other than, and obviously, John was not a female. That's why I'm saying female. John the Baptist was the first one, right? Jesus had this heart for this woman who wanted so much to be happy that she got married more than 6 times. And Jesus kind of calls her out on it. He goes, go call your husband. And she goes, well, I don't have it. And Jesus goes, well, that's right. You've had 6, and the one you're with is not your husband. She's like, could this be prophet? You think? And then she runs and starts telling people about Christ, and people gather in Samaria, which was traditionally very, very upset with Jerusalem. Do you know what the problem was with Samaritans? They were not fully Jewish. When people were taken out of, do you remember that they were the city, Jerusalem, and a lot of Israel were taken several times to Babylon, to these other places. And then what happened? Jeremiah talks about people staying there and not worrying about coming back to Israel. Says, buy the house, plant the garden, give your children into marriage, receive kids into your family, which is not what the Jewish people were thinking. Samaritans were people that were mixed, Babylonian and Jewish blood. So when they came back, they could not find their place in Jerusalem anymore, because they were still children of Jacob, but did they not fit in? And they were isolated, and they were hated for it. They were actually called dogs. And most of us would be called dogs too, because we're Gentile. Very aggressive, very divisive. So in the middle of Samaria, Jesus goes, you're going to be witnesses in Jerusalem, then you're going to be witnesses in Judea, the bigger picture, right? And we like the bigger picture, but we don't necessarily like the tough place. So Samaria, for me, is a place that's difficult to live on purpose. Imagine having a call and said, I believe God is calling you into the toughest part of Chicago, and that's where you should find an apartment. Remember that 6-block place that I told you about in the south side of Chicago? Let's move there and let's make a difference. How many of you would be excited to do that? Well, praise God for you, but I'm not going with you. But I did go to South Central LA, and I had no idea that it was going to be so difficult. I remember I was giving a counseling session to a couple that wanted to get married. We used to meet at this, I should have put some of those pictures up, I'm just going to find them, in this community center. In the middle of the community center was, in this huge park, there was a community center, and that's where I met at 5 o'clock, I think, with a couple that was getting married. And at 6 o'clock, we started a service in Spanish on Saturday. So I am walking to the park, and when I go to the park, there's all these balloons, red balloons, and all these people there, just, in a picnic. Didn't think about it, right? So I just walked through. At 5:30, the LAPD kicks in the door, and with their guns drawn, saying, let me see your hands. And I'm like, I'm a pastor. and the couple that was with me, and they took us out. And when I went outside, it was like a scene in a picture, like Training Day or a movie where I see all of these people, hundreds of people on their knees, are being arrested because this was a picnic for the Bloods. in South Central LA. Now, would the police usually do that? No, but this is what happened. They got, they got, they got notice that the blue people, the Crips, were planning to attack all of them through all three sides of the park, and they were going to cause a massacre. So they went in and they acted on it, and I'm grateful because I was right in the middle of that. So I lived a block and a half from there, and when I walked home, there was this little fence, and there were people against the fence, and across the fence, and the other side of the fence were my children, looking at how these people were getting arrested. And I did not feel safe. And I did not feel called. Well, I felt called, but I did not feel safe in my calling. And there are times when people, if you go and always lived in the States and you're called to a Latin American country, you're not going to feel so safe there, as beautiful as it might be. And different customs, and there are people that look at you differently already. So Samaria is that kind of place. You're disliking and being suspicious already. You dislike the people and have preconceived notions of them. The reason these people are poor, the reason these people are this or that is because of this. Like you know what you're talking about. Unless you live there and you've invested there and you've been a part of that. You see, we want to be the body of Christ, but we all still want to feel comfortable. We still want to feel safe. They don't like your race. Period. I don't talk a lot about that, but there are people that when they look at me, they don't, you're not one of us. I'm like, well, I don't know. In Guatemala, I'm not one of them either. And here, I'm not one of us either. There's like their worship and their politics, and there's all these things that make you separate from folks that are different than you. And this is the huge evaluation here. Whether you look at them and you think that they're not worthy of salvation. Any group that you might think that, I can tell you that the Bible tells you that you're wrong. Jesus came and died for the whole world that they may have salvation, right? Can we say John 3:16? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. That doesn't really do anything, right? But the problem with race and the problem with all of the things that we talked about, what separate us, is that we look at some folks that we don't believe are worthy. And that's not Christ-like, because he came to die for all of us. Being in South Central was one of the hardest things for my family and for my marriage. It was a place of insecurity. It's a place where you have to really believe that the Lord is with you. To tell you a funny story, is I used to live right in front of a housing project. Because even though it was South Central, it was very expensive to live there. So I lived in front of a housing project, fascinating. And there was a group of prostitutes that always hung around there, right? And every time I would go and get out of my house and get in front of the car, this group of people would say, "Hi, Pastor Danny." and I'm like, man, people are really going to think I'm a really good pastor? I'm a really bad pastor. But it was hilarious because, I would bring groceries or, we would have connections with World Vision and would, pass out groceries and people know who I was. I would walk the streets. I would not feel unsafe. And I remember having a confrontation with one of the big gang members there. We used to have youth groups and we used to gather youth and we were right in the same park that I told you about. And we were having a picnic with the church, just like we are now. But imagine, we're in the middle of the picnic, and then, there's a group of folks that are gangbangers that stand in the corner, and then I see people starting to pack their things, and I'm like, "Oh, Nevada, where are you going?" I'm like, "Yeah, we'll see you later. We'll see you in church tomorrow, okay?" And people start packing and leaving, and I go, "No, don't leave." And I go up to them, and this guy had his gun right in front of his pants. And I go, "What are you doing?" And when I look at it, I go, "Man, I was really dumb." But I go, "Well, what are you doing?" He's like, "Are you the pastor?" I go, "Yeah." I know the one that's been taking my brother to the tutoring program? Yeah. He goes, thank you. I go, do you realize you're scaring the people? Put that gun away. What's wrong with you? He goes, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's better, right? You know, see? And I'm like, guys, we're serving the community, man. We're here because we love you, brother and sister. Respect, man. And it was just the grace of God. I could have been shot that day. You would have never known me, right? But you know what I said afterwards? I didn't just say, go away. I said, did you eat yet? How hard is it to have that kind of compassion for those that can harm us, or that cause harm to us? And they came in and they sat down and they ate. I don't know that I would do that again. But I did. And I think that was totally the Holy Spirit. I'm not sure. Some of you are asking, with this story, Danny, I don't know what you're asking us to do about these things. But there are places where God is calling you to be bold with your faith that you may not be responding to. No man's land, a place of hate, a place where you don't belong. I mean, sometimes you want to go where no one knows your name, right? You want to go where somebody knows your name. A place of discomfort where you could face prejudice. And by the way, you know, I speak English. I'm an educated guy. I own a home. I have a car. I mean, I'm very privileged. I am a privileged person. And when, you know, but to face some of the things that I face sometimes, I wonder if I did not have any of these things, how more I would be treated. You know, I remember I was the keynote speaker for a banquet in a Palmer House. Anybody been to the Palmer House in Chicago? It's a beautiful place. I was the keynote speaker, by the way. So that day I put on we call it smoking in Spanish, the tuxedos, you know, it's black tie optional. So I'm going to talk about the orphanage that I'll tell you about today. And I was all the way in the back. At that time, we didn't have iPads, we had flashcards. Young people, that's pieces of paper you wrote things down. And I had flashcards, and I was going through my flashcards, and there was this group of ladies. You know, it was banquet style, right? And it was a table, and they were all sitting down. And then one of them said, "Hey," and I'm like, "Me? You know, yeah, you, come on." And I'm like, "Oh, maybe they want me to sign their bulletin, or they want to buy a CD. I don't know, right?" So I go, "Hi," and they're like, "It's too cold in here." And I'm like, I didn't understand why they were telling me that. They're like, "Oh, they think I work there. Oh, let me see what I can do." And they're like, "And she didn't get any water." And I'm like, "I'll be right back." So I went to the back, got one of those pitchers of water, brought the water, and I served her. And she goes, "Thank you." And she put a whole $1 in my pocket. Hey. And I'm like, "Thank you." Then they go, "We're going to go on Reverend Dr. Martinez." So as I get up on stage, I see this group of ladies going, "Why is our waiter going up to talk now?" Of course, they went up afterwards and, you know, they apologized. They're like, "Well, we didn't know, right?" But those things happen to me all the time. And if you don't take them in stride, by the way, you would be very bitter. And that may not be the case for you, but it may be something else. And we have to just get over those things. A place where it's easy to hate, and the devil strives if he can make you hate. So, that's South Central LA, that's where I used to live. Right there in that corner. That's the house. If he's pointed doesn't want to point there, there you go. And I feel like the force is not with me. I used to live right there, and across the street was the place for housing. And it was one of the five longest and hardest years that I've had in ministry. But you know what I've learned? That my safety is in Jesus Christ. I'd rather be in his hands in South Central than not in his hands in Beverly Hills. I would still go to Beverly Hills, but you know, maybe like that. So I kind of went through that. I want to tell you one story, though, a redemption story. I love stories. Are you okay? Are you okay with stories?
Oh yeah.
Walter and Kinda. I won't tell you all of this, but Walter and Kinda. We were starting the Church of the Redeemer in this park that I told you about, right? And we're there, and I'm like, church planter, right? We passed out flyers. We did all the preparations, and now we're gonna start the service in this community service. So. As I go out to see, and it's 9:30, I think we're starting the service at 10, to see who's coming, right? We see a couple in the park sleeping under the tree. A couple of them. And then one of my leaders says, Pastor, are you going to invite them to come? And the church planter and me come like, oh, no. They're going to scare the other people away. They probably don't even smell very good. This is me now, right? If you have to repent, I repent with you. But then the Holy Spirit kind of punches you right in the kidney, right? I remember how you say that in Spanish. And I'm like, oh, how dumb is that? So I went up to them. And I'm not saying anything. So when I turn around, they're like, church! I'm serious. You think I'm exaggerating? I did not want to wake them up. I want to, let them sleep, They said, church, we would love to be there. And guess who's front row in the service of the Church of the Redeemer? The first service where we had 125 people. It was Walter and Kinda. They were homeless. She used to sell herself to be able to feed herself and to eat. He used to sell her. And guess what? The church, after a few months, put money together to pay for the deposit of their apartment. And they have not been homeless since. That's the power of the church. And that is one of the, but you see, I would have never experienced that if I had not lived there. And they still call me, Pastor Danny, how are you? And I'm like, good, I'm in the bathroom, I can't talk right now. They seem to always call it the worst time. It's true. Okay. So I wanted to tell you that, right? So the Church of the Redeemer was the multicultural church I planted in South State Central, and it was a wonderful place. We started with 12 people, all from InterVarsity, which is another culture in itself. I had no idea what InterVarsity was, and they taught me a lot. They confused me a lot, but they taught me a lot. And we ended up with 2 services, one multicultural in English and one in Spanish. And when I left after 5 years, that was my contract, they had to hire 4 people to replace me. 2 pastors, one in English and one in Spanish, a worship leader, and a youth pastor. So, and I really appreciate that. I didn't kill the church. I'm just glad they survived. To tell you the truth, if you hear me talking about as an expert, oh my God, no, not at all. I have walked by faith and not by sight because, man, living in some of those places is really difficult. And they have transformed several of the places there. They've become community activists. They've done really wonderful things too. In the church was mainly African American, a third of it. So I've been an African American pastor, a Latino for the third, and a third of it was Anglo. Part of that was Asian, and when I went to San Diego, we also had, Samoans and Filipinos, and it was just wonderful. And by the way, the best thing about this is the picnics and the spread. Oh my goodness, people know how to cook. Be careful with Samoans though, they fry everything. Everything is fried in coconut oil. Don't ask me why. I was afraid to drink the Coke. Okay. So when we look at church markers as being Samaria and where are we expanding on, giving the people a good worship experience, one that is inclusive. We've for a long time had the attitude, okay, you come and you join us. You be a part of us, rather than what is our community? Where is our community together? How do we worship together? You see, if your Latinos are not dancing in the Sunday service, you're probably not setting a space where they can dance. And if you freak out when someone dances in your church, then you got to expand your territory a little bit more, right? I go to services where I lose 10, 15 pounds in the service because of the worship. And I go to services where no one raises their hands, where nobody kneels down. I understand having a personal way of worshiping. It's totally great and fine. But when we're talking about community, we need to make sure that if African Americans start coming to your church and they're not screaming, "Shut up, preacher!" We're not giving them the space to do it. So how do we do that, right? And that's something that the church has to figure out. Koinonia, community. Are we really the church? You see, doing camp is a really wonderful thing. Because you get to know people. You need to sit down with people. You get to be in a place where you are all the same. We're staying in the same places. And we become the church because we get to know one another. And of course, service and leadership. Are we serving our community and are we leading our community? Or are we allowing ourselves to be led? And then Jesus also said, after Samaria, after your uncomfortable place, after your difficult place, you are to go to the ends of the world. So we established faith starts with you, right? It's like your relationship with Christ. Bless you. But it's also communal. You're also responsible for your church. Am I my brother's keeper? You are. You are your sister's keeper. But it's also global. When you go on vacation, you should always try to get to church on Sunday. And try to see how people worship. I remember being in Colombia, in Medellin actually. And we were right on a hill. Okay? And there were 2 tents. And it started raining. Because it rains a lot. And then water starts pouring down from the hill into our feet. And I'm like, there is an American, oh God, should we move? What's going on, right? And they're like, no, it's fine. It's just got to go through. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I think the band is going to get electrocuted. Right? Lord, prepare me. And it was my turn to preach. And they're like, no, just worship harder. Worship harder? I mean, wow. I don't know about you. I've been in churches, like I was preaching in this great church in Houston, Texas. Houston is very humid. It was like 78 outside, but it was hot. So I go to the pastor, can we turn the air conditioner on? I'm like, then I look at myself, I'm like, wasn't that the guy that was being, baptized, in the feet, in Medellin, Colombia? And we really need to be grateful for what we have, amen. I've been to Faith Covenant. You guys have a nice place. This is where you say amen, hallelujah, all this reconstruction, all of this, beautiful, right? It's worth it. But you know what? It's not for our glory, and it's not necessarily for our comfort. It's for the glory of God. And this has to be part of our. And guess what? Now, you don't even have to go to the ends of the earth to do that. The ends of the earth are coming to you. And you got to be ready. I tell Latinos all the time, you have been the object of mission for a long time. Now you are the missionaries. And you're the missionaries of the United States. Because the church without the minority church, listen to this, church. The majority church without the minority church is decaying. The covenant church without the 100 and so Latino churches, without the 100 and some African American churches, without the many multicultural and many monolithic churches, we would be in decay. But there is a revival coming, and we want all of you to be a part of that. So you are to be witnesses. Be a witness in your house. The way you treat your wife, your husband, your children, your spouse's mother, etc. how you share your faith and how you could tell your story. You're an expert in telling your own story, how God has saved you, how God has been with you. But that also goes into your community and your neighbors. And it also talks about going beyond our being comfortable to the ends of the earth. I hope you've gotten that out of this message. Uh, one of the practical ways I asked your church to be able to share that you can go to the ends of the earth is through this has been a place for ministry for me for 30 years. I can't tell you the whole story because it's too long, but I ran into them and I loved children. I really loved children. And they had two houses, one in the city of Chicago, one in the city of Guatemala, and one in the jungle for children over 2. And I used to sponsor the one 0 to 2. But then a sinkhole opened up in the middle of Guatemala and swallowed up, a couple of blocks. So I don't know if you heard about that or not, but they had to move all the children to the jungle. And that's a problem because in the jungle with diapers, you develop diaper rash and infections out of diaper rash. So we started then having a different kind of relationship where I was bringing all this medicine to Guatemala, right? I visit Guatemala every year. And what I've done is I've released albums, like with my friends that I was telling you about, do concerts, and collect all of that to go towards the orphanage. The problem is I have not been able to do that because, first of all, we had COVID, and before COVID, I was a superintendent. I was trying to get everything else done, so I haven't done any concerts. I'm really rusty right now, and I love performing. I love doing my music. I only perform my own music. And Casa Guatemala, it's been this great place for me to be able to show faith. And you can only get there by boat, by the way. It's called, I don't know if you know the Rio Dulce area, Misalan. Yeah, that's where that is. And it's about 45 minutes from the main bridge there. And that's me, just in case you wanted to know where I live. Sorry, Pastor Sands. There you go. So that's me. And it's on stilts, because it does, the water does rise, and you can tell I have a few more pounds there, but that's okay. And you have all these children. I told you we only have 120 orphans, but we service about 600 kids because we have people in the surrounding villages that cannot really afford much. So we allow them to live in the orphanage, and we house them, and we give them 3 meals. And one of the reasons why I sell CDs at $15 is because I did all the additions. And if you buy a CD, you feed a child for 2 weeks, 3 meals a day. So I love giving people that opportunity. Okay. And I've stayed there a couple of times, but I'm 54 years old now, so my back just really cannot take this, this kind of a bed. And there are bathrooms and all of that. We have a nurse that comes in once a week to take care of the kids, and we have a dentist. Do you know Rafael Lizama in his church? They are there right now. That's one of our church plants that meets in Campton Hills near Elgin, and they're there right now, helping either paint or take care of kids. Their big job was to take the kids to the dentist in town. So, and we pay for that as well. So these are some of our kids. I usually go in December when not all of the kids are there, only the kids that live there. And, I could have been one of these kids. They look just like me. And I would have liked, if I was in that place, for someone to take care of me. And then these are my 3 amigos. Pastor Roberto Guione from Simi Valley, California, Pastor Abraham Mejorano from Norwich, California, and Oscar, my oldest friend. He's been my friend for 45 years, 46 years. We met in the womb. And this is what I wanted to show you. Remember when I was going up the hill and I go like, this is the last year I'm doing this? That's what I found, and I'm like, I need 30 more years. And just what a joy. They have so many dogs. Guatemala has so many dogs. I want you to know. And of course, they kind of do that. I wanted to sing a song this morning. Would that be okay? Yeah? That doesn't sound like it. I'm like, well, I have the microphone, so. Let's see. And it's a salsa song, so anytime you want to move, please feel free to do that. But I am going to ask you to clap your hands. And it's in Spanish. Not all of the CDs in Spanish. But you can clap your hands if you want to. Cuando la gente te enseñe sus colores, cuando te digan que son hermanos de verdad, pero sus acciones no confirman todo, ten cuidado, guarda tu corazón. No siempre el que te dice que te ama busca lo mejor para ti. Algunos nunca supieron valorarse y no saben cómo poder amar. ¿Por qué gritar? ¿Por qué llorar? Si la verdad siempre es mejor. La gente enseña lo que es. Pon atención para gritar tu corazón. Ser partido en un montón. Pon atención y enfócate en sus colores. Como duele que te traicione alguien con el cual conviviste de verdad. Le diste el amor de un hermano, le confiaste con tu seguridad. A pesar de que la vida sigue, nos espera ese gran dolor. Mas dáselo a Cristo que tiene cuenta lo que es ser traicionado más de 1000. ¿Por qué gritar? ¿Por qué llorar? Si la verdad siempre es mejor. La gente enseña lo que es. Ponle atención para evitar tu corazón. Ser partido en un montón. Ponga atención y enfócate en sus colores. Now, can you put your hands together now? Let me hear you. Colores. Por eso el fruto. So it goes something like this. Hay por qué gritar, hay por qué llorar. Siempre la verdad es lo mejor. Would you stand? Por eso, colores. And if you want to dance, this is your chance now. Y al Jesucristo es el camino, mamá, la verdad y la vida. Por eso, el fruto es lo que revela cuando la gente te enseñe sus colores. Ponle atención. Por eso, colores, cuidado, mi amigo. No te vayas cuando te vayan. No te duele cuando te vayan. Get your hands together, come on. Hey, ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Just one last time. Come on, you can do this. It's ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Everybody goes, hey. All right. You made the same. Thank you. Anybody put your fingers right on your neck like this? Let's take a look at what your temperature is. You know what I mean. There we go. So I wanted to tell you one last story, and we're done. We're done for today. And thank you for putting up with me this whole week. My goodness. After you go here, you're like, okay, I don't want to hear about the axe anymore, or colores, whatever that is. So the song Colores, we're telling you, bass player, where's your bass player? There you are. And he's like, how do you write songs? And I go, it differs. I'm not a salsa guy. By the way, in Colombia, did I pass the test? Was that good? Okay, good, because Colombia is the place for salsa, you know? And salsa is that kind of genre of music that we're looking at. And, I'm a rock and roll guy. I grew up with heavy metal in the 80s. I had long hair and the many earrings. I'm serious, I did. I'm not joking. You're like, yeah, come on. Yeah. That's how we say no in Spanish, by the way. Did they know that? Did they know that? That's how we say no in Spanish. Yeah, I won the lotto. Anyway, so I was talking to a friend who was let down severely by a friend betrayed him. And I go, when people show you their colors, you need to believe them. In Spanish, it sounds better, right? Cuando la gente te enseña sus colores. In English, is when people show you their fruit, their actions, believe them, right? And he goes, man, that sounds like a song. Okay, maybe. And then I was going to the studio that day, and I looked at, grabbed my guitar, A minor. Cuando la gente te enseña sus colores. And I go, oh, well, give me a beat. I think it was 114. Did what we call a ghost track, which is the first voice track that you do for your recording. And then I go, I don't really know what that is. And my producer goes, that sounds like salsa. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not a salsa guy. And he goes, well, let me see what I can do. Came back a week later, and had this set up already. And I'm like, oh, I feel like Mark Anthony, Ricky Martin at the same time. And believe it or not, it's been top 10 for the last 3 months in El Salvador, out of all places. Not in Colombia, but in El Salvador. I did one television appearance in El Salvador, and they've been using it. So if I can ask you, if you don't buy a CD today, would you play it on your iTunes, on your Spotify, on your Apple? I would appreciate it. Someone listening to it. Okay. What was I going to tell you? I was going to tell you about this story. So I was in San Diego. I have a friend of mine who also has an orphanage in Tanzania, in Arusha. And he came to the church, and I didn't let him speak because I know he was going to take 3.5 hours, right? So I didn't let him speak, but I told him to give testimony. He still took 30 minutes, but he talked about it. People were just really moved by his testimony. They had a lot of kids, and all they wanted was one way of how they could help the kids, right? So as he was sitting down, he said, everybody, can you just help me pray? I want the Lord to give us a cow. And then he sat down. And I'm like, okay. And I go, why a cow? He goes, well, if we had a cow, we could harvest the milk, make cheese, sell it, but also the kids would be able to taste milk for the first time. Doesn't that hit you? You know what I remember, every time I say that, it reminds me of that many times I've thrown away gallons of milk because nobody drank it in the house. Kids are so weird. You buy bananas, they're gone in the next 5 minutes. You buy bananas the next week, nobody touches them. No, am I alone here? My kids are the only weird ones? So I said, how much is a cow? It was $500. And I said something I had never said in church before. Let's buy a cow. So we picked up a love offering. We bought 3 cows for the orphanage. So he sent me a picture. That's not the picture, by the way. He sent me a horrible picture. I go like, no one's gonna want to donate a cow like that. So I put this. So this is our symbolic cow. And he goes, you have 2 churches. What is the name of your first church? I go, Grace Covenant. And he's like, this cow, we're gonna name it Grace Covenant. I'm like, oh, the second cow we're gonna name after your Latina church. What's the Latina church? Iglesia del Pacto Nueva Visión. Oh, let's call it Visión. I go, it's not French, it's Spanish, it's Visión. Yeah, Visión, right? And I'm like, okay, so Visión is in the middle of Tanzania somewhere. And I go, and I hope you don't mind, the third one, we're gonna name it Pastor Danny.
Amen.
Amen. Now you say it. I finally got an amen out of it. I should have started with it. So we are doing the same thing for our orphanage. And this person came up to me and said, I want to buy a cow, but I want you to name it after my mother-in-law. We can't do that. So if you want to buy a cow, if you want to do that through this central conference, we will name the cow, but we will name it after you, not after anybody else. And that's it. That's it. That wasn't even a picture, by the way. That's a still of the video that's on YouTube. So thank you so much for all the help. Blessings to you. This is my information. In case you need my office or our conference, you want to look at all of our churches, including your information. I mean, we have you linked to that. And it's been a pleasure to be with you. I hope that you can contribute to the orphanage. If you can't, we want you to please pray for our kids. This is, and I told you, I was fully transparent. I do this because I feel really good about it. And though those kids break my heart every single time I go there, I know that God cares for me profusely. He cares for me desperately because I have more than I'll ever need. And these kids that are playing in the dirt or playing with marbles, they're so happy. A lot happier than sometimes I am. So I want to encourage you to do that.